I have got all of the things. I am starting seeds for the first time of the season today, and I have got pockets full of all sorts of stuff in true Jill fashion. All right. Oh my gosh, I am starting my first seeds of 2021. You guys, this is exciting. I've had to refrain from starting my tomatoes. I went back and looked at my calendar. I didn't start my tomatoes until the second week. I started the second week in February and then sowed them every week after that. Like every Friday I sowed new ones. That way I could have them at different sizes and everything like that. And I wanted to be able to kind of succession sow them out into my garden as well. But today I'm not doing any tomatoes. I'm not doing any peppers. I've always kind of fell victim to starting my seeds too early. And really what I ended up with was a leggy, just not good plant. You know, they were leggy, but they just were too big. I kind of joked around that I sold tomato trees, and I don't want to do that. And I certainly don't want to do that. So today I am going to be starting my herbs. Now these are things that take a bit longer that I don't have a whole lot of experience with. So I'm just going to start them early just to kind of, you know, let me have some wiggle room if there is an error. So I'm going to be starting for the 4th year in a row. Lavender. I mentioned on a previous vlog I can't grow lavender to save my life. However, I am not a quitter, so I am going to try my hand at this. I've also got some chamomile, some different basils, some sage and things like that, some calendula. I know that the calendula, I have been told, does better direct sowed. So primarily I'm going to be sowing that in the garden directly, but I did just want for my own reference to try and start it and see what happens. You know, I was told for years not to start sunflowers. They don't like their roots to be disturbed, so plant them directly in the garden, which you can certainly do that, but for placement issues I like to go ahead and start my seeds so I can lay everything out and then move around, you know, however meets my needs and whatever I find aesthetically pleasing. So I'm just going to try some calendula. I have plenty of seeds just to see how it does started and how it does transplanted, and take notes and either be like, okay, no, you know, that didn't work. I did it for with poppies, for instance. Last year I attempted to start my poppies. Everyone told me don't do it, they need to be direct sown, and that was 100% the case. So this year I bought some poppies. I'll just be sowing them directly in the ground. I won't try to start it, but I do encourage you, if you have the time and the extra seeds, kind of play around with that, because you might be surprised things that are not intended to be started and transplanted that actually do, you know, just fine. I'm also going to be planting spinach. We eat a lot of spinach, so I bought several different spinaches. Look at this really pretty mix. I grew this last year. It did not grow in abundance, so it definitely was not prolific for me, but the flavors were really, really diverse and tasted really well, and obviously they're beautiful, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. But then I just bought some America spinach from Seeds Now, some giant winter spinach, and here's some more of the orchid spinach. And so I'm going to try my hand at these. For me, in the past, spinach, I've not really had the best of luck transplanting it, and I've not really had the best of luck direct sowing it. So so spinach for me is one of those that I've kind of had to source out and buy, and I'd really like to be able to just hone in on what I need to do to grow it well. So this is one of those things that I've not grown well in the past, but I'm going to try. Also have some Swiss chards, and then a lot of lettuce and kale varieties. I've been harvesting the last of the kale that we've had from the winter, and so I'll just be taking that up and kind of replanting it whenever these become mature. But I've just got Marvel of 4 Seasons, some crisp mint, just some different like romaine lettuces. Now I'll plant these out in the garden far enough to where they will, you know, establish a mature, you know, romaine head. But the rest of these, for the most part, I kind of, you know, like to direct sow these, and I sow them as cut and come again lettuces, and it works really, really well for me. Botanical Interest usually always sends you this free seed, and this is one of those that has all these different varieties of lettuces, and I direct sow these just really heavily, honestly, and I harvest off of these a lot, and I like it because there's lots of different textures and colors, and it tastes really well. I also got this Encore lettuce mix from Johnny's, and then I have some arugula seeds from Mom's Now. These are actually sprouting seeds, but I prefer to eat my arugula when it is just a baby green anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and sow some of those. But there's really kind of the freedom of this. I'm in zone 7B, so I know I could also be planting spring brassicas right now, so I could be starting my cabbages, my broccoli, cauliflower, you know, anything in that brassica family, but I don't have the bed space to be able to plant that and get a harvest off of that before I need to plant my spring things for my summer harvest. So I do kind of encourage you guys to be mindful of that as well. When you're starting things, figure out what space you're in and figure out if you have a long enough spring to be able to harvest whatever you're sowing before you'll need that garden bed and that space for your tomatoes or peppers or maybe something like that. And so yeah, I've just got your scarlet kale. I grow this every year. Your dino kale, and then I've just got your dwarf blue curled kale from Botanical Interest. I am going to try this year though ornamental kale. I have been seeing in my area people using these in their bouquets for flowers, and so when I was not very knowledgeable about seeds, I bought this and I didn't realize that you didn't eat it. And so now that I know that, a few years later, I've had these seeds for years, so I'm not sure what the germination rate will be on them, but they're really pretty. I've seen them put in bouquets and they're really pretty. So I'm just gonna try that and we'll just see what happens. I'm really excited though. You know, I've dreamed of this greenhouse for quite some time now, and just being able to work in here, I just feel really good about it. Nathan is at work, but it is on his list of things, of his honey-do list, to get my grow lights hung out here. I am still going to put grow lights out here. It does get sufficient light out here. However, it's the winter and the days are kind of unpredictable as far as if the sun comes out or not. So I want to go ahead and have grow lights out here to have that option. If it's an overcast or cloudy day or whatever, I can still just turn those grow lights on and have have the artificial lighting that I need. I'll link below everything that I'm mentioning today. The seed companies, I'll link below. The grow lights, the heat mats, things like that. You'll just be able to find it in the description. But I plan on putting up the grow lights. We'll just have them, we will have them come from here. We have an extension cord we've run out here. I will put heat mats down here. That'll kind of depend too on if I turn those on, just based off the weather. So like right now it's like 30 something degrees outside and it's almost 60 in here. So I don't think it would need to be on right now. And then we'll have a heater out here that primarily I just turn on at night to make sure that it kind of stays above freezing in here. I get asked a lot what soil I use for seed starting if I make my own. I've tried for several years actually to make my own, and pretty unsuccessfully. It's always just been really dry. So I don't know, that is something I'm still sourcing out in a bulk option. I know that I have asked around a lot. That's just not something we have available, which really stinks when you are starting hundreds and thousands of seeds. So what I bought, just for the sake of needing to get these planted, I went down to Home Depot. Now this is available at my Lowe's or Home Depot if you have a nursery or something like that, and it is Jiffy brand. It is natural and organic seed starting, and it has got peat moss, which is good for a nutrient balance. It's got the cocoa coir, which is good for drainage, and then vermiculite. So when I have made my soil in the past, I have done compost, I have added peat moss, vermiculite, topsoil, and I don't know, it wasn't that good, light, fluffy soil that you're wanting, at least not for my needs. And I just realized that, you know, a lot of my plants were suffering. A lot of my plants had phosphorus deficiency, and I had to go back in and add like blood meal and things like that. One thing I encourage you to do if you are trying to make your own, which I totally understand, you just want that really, really light and fluffy soil. When it's damp, you want to be able to kind of squeeze it and it comes like a sponge. It kind of comes apart, but not really. And so I don't know. The only bad thing about seed starting soil is most of them all come in these small bags. So this is a 12 quart, and typically they come in a 10 or 12 quart, and this is like $10 a bag in my area. However, it is organic, and for the plant sale, they do encourage you to start all your seeds in organic soil. So for me, this just checks all those boxes, and it's really easy. Now I will try to source out something else when I'm starting all my tomatoes and peppers and things that I know I'm going to grow an abundance of. So I have here 128 cell trays. You can buy these from Greenhouse Megastore, Bootstrap Farmer, just kind of depending on the quality that you want, and you know how many you need will kind of determine where you source these out from. Now, one of the reasons that I start most of my things, like my tomatoes, my peppers, I start in here is because I do sell, you know, majority of my plants that I'm starting. And so if I start them in these 2.5, 3.5 inch pots, they're gonna have to end up here anyways. And I have found that when I start them in this, I'm wasting a lot of soil that I don't need to, and typically I just up pot them as they have outgrown their cells. So what I do is I'll start in here, and then when they've got a good enough, or you know, root system established, from here I will probably up pot them, and these are 50 cell trays, which are a bit bigger. Then I will probably go from here, because they have established a good root system in here. Then I can just go ahead and up pot them to their final destination, versus if I do it in here, it's going to take quite a bit of time for them to establish enough roots to where when I pull it out, all of that soil is a good root system. And so that's just kind of my way of thinking. There is no rhyme or reason. It's whatever you have on hand, whatever you feel comfortable with. I encourage you to do that. That's just kind of what I have done in the past. I start with the 128 cell, I up pot to the 50 cell, and then I usually up pot again, and the last one, whatever I plan on selling the plant into. Now I do just have my markers. I'll label them. If I'm doing an entire tray of, say, the same thing, I'll just write, you know, on Scotch tape or something on the side what it is, and that's easier too. That way you're not wasting, you know, a ton of unnecessary planters and stuff like that. But you know, I think it's always really fun to kind of just experiment and figure out your own system. There were many years I went off of other people's systems because I didn't know, you know, I did what someone else did, and it didn't really work right for me. And you don't really know what's gonna work right until you try it, you know. And so I would encourage you, especially if you're buying these bulk, you can get them at a really cheap price point, to where if you do have some left over and you realize you don't like growing in this size, you can donate them, you can sell them, you know, give them away, or whatever that may look like. And so for me, I have found that the cost has been pretty low. And typically I'll always use whatever I buy, but I have found whenever I kind of took the time to tweak my own system and hone in and cater my needs the best is when I really started getting into a groove of things, you know, kind of like with the starting seeds. I would start seeds early because I would see other people start seeds early, and then I realized, well, we're in totally different growing zones. There's a reason they're starting in January and I'm not, you know. And so just going against the grain and figuring out what's going to work best for you, it's obviously always going to be worth it, just catering to your own specific needs. So I just have these 10-20 trays. These are the deep trays. I stick all of mine in here, and then I'll bottom water all of them, which I recommend doing as well, especially if the seed packet tells you to like sow the seed lightly. Let's fill it up. Now, for the sake of not having all of my stuff transitioned from the old greenhouse out here, I'm just taking the bag and filling this up. Typically what I do is I have a really big tote. I got this tote from Home Depot. I keep all of my soil, so I'll go ahead and pour all my soil in there, keep it in the tote, and then just because I don't want to have a lot of excess soil on my workstation and I don't want to be wasting a lot of soil, I will fill the trays up in the actual bucket and then move them up here to sow. However, I haven't gotten that far in cleaning out everything, so this is just how I'm doing it today. So a lot of the herbs that I'm growing this year are first time for me. Typically I buy my herbs already started, so this will be the first time that I've I mean, I've attempted to grow lavender before, I've grown rosemary before, but this will be the first time that like I'm being extremely intentional with it. So I'm excited. The chamomile, I am gonna just go ahead and direct sow. These are so small that there's no way I could start these. But my basil, I've got a few different ones that I'm actually really excited about. Every year I grow the dark purple, just it's the opal basil, and it tastes really good. We cook with it a lot, and then we put it in our teas and things like that. I've got just your typical Genovese, but then I wanted to try the lime. And in the seed swap, I got sent, it's called a lettuce basil leaf, and it is basil, but it grows as large as a lettuce leaf. It is quite remarkable, and so it's really big, and you're able to actually use it for wraps. And so I thought that was very, very interesting. What I do typically with my herbs is I plant them in my center blocks. So the bed that I have made out of center blocks, I'll usually line everything in there with like different basils and stuff like that, and then I'll just add decorative pots. The terracotta tower garden, I will be growing lots of herbs in there, and so I'm really just kind of excited to try that out this year. Alright, so someone challenged me with this question on Instagram the other night, and I thought it was really good, and so I thought it would be fun to kind of engage with you guys on it as well. And that was, what was my favorite thing that I grew in 2020? Now that's hard. I grew so many things that I loved. So of course, naturally, I couldn't just pick one. And so I had said the tromboncino squash, which I'm still going to grow this year, and then the Grand Marshal tomatoes. That was just really, really fun for me. It was the first time I've ever grown a determinate tomato. And so that was really fun. And so I want to know in the comments, what was your favorite thing you grew in 2020? And then what are you most excited about growing in 2021? That one, I don't actually know. There's so many. I'm trying to think. Well, the flowers. So obviously the flowers are new, and I'm growing those this year, and I haven't in the past. So maybe the dahlias. I have been told though that dahlias can be kind of tricky. Floret Farm, I guess, has a lot of really good free information and good books, so I'm going to try to check into that and keep my fingers crossed that I have a successful year. But for 2021, I think I'm just maybe not so excited for the varieties as I am for the growth that's going to happen, and that's exciting because I know this is my first year growing flowers, and that's going to be challenging because I've never grown flowers before. I've been trying to buy all the netting, to trellis them up, and I just know that it's going to be different. I love being challenged to push myself and try new things, and so I'm actually really kind of pumped about that. I'm excited to just try something different, just figure out what works and what doesn't work, and so I think that'll be kind of cool. And then I am growing a lot of paste tomatoes this year, which I don't typically do either, so I think it'll be kind of fun to see how those grow in comparison to slicers, figure out my yields, which one yielded more. So those are all just things that, I don't know, when you start thinking about, I wanted to keep a record for myself now. What am I most excited for? And then at the end of 2021 season, the summer season or whatever, look back and think, oh, okay, the one thing I was excited about may not have been the thing that done well, or you never know, but I just think it's kind of a fun game anyways. Another important thing that I always try to remember when I am sowing seeds is, figure out the germination rate on them. Are these seeds old seeds or new seeds? And that'll determine how many I sow. My Johnnies, I honestly have about a 98% germination rate on my Johnny seeds. So I just do one seed per plug. I do not overseed anything because then it's just wasting. I have to thin it out, and that's just not cost effective for me. But if I have an older seed, I will sow multiple of those just to make sure at least one germinates. Or if the seed packet, I know sometimes Baker Creek will say overpack due to low germ rate. So just be mindful of that too when you're planting. If you think your seeds are old or you're not really sure about the germination rate, you may want to plant a couple of them just to make sure you at least get one to sprout. So once I have them seeded, and I'll kind of have a system figured out, so more than likely I'll bring in some sort of stand that I keep my soil on. So I'll have my soil here. I can just take my trays, fill them up, scrape them off, and then start seeding here, which is nice. I like the idea of having some sort of system. But then once I've seeded it, I will simply just pop them in my 10-20 deep trays and then bottom water them. And then is when they will just come right over here. I'll have the heat mat set up, the grow lights, and then I'll just leave them here to grow. I know to some people seed starting may seem intimidating. It was one of those things that was extremely intimidating for me for a very long time. But I found the more you do it and the more you realize, this isn't that bad, or I can do this, it becomes much less intimidating. And I encourage you guys, if maybe you've been thinking about starting seeds, but the process seems kind of overwhelming, or you don't know where to start, just start. Because you might find out how easy it is. You might find out that you actually enjoy planting seeds and you just didn't realize it. And you may not enjoy it, but realize that it's something you want to work on and you want to get better at. And that's one of those things, is kind of like refining yourself through the process of learning something is also really valuable. There are a lot of really good options. If you do not have a greenhouse or a high tunnel or anything like that, do not be discouraged from starting seeds, because you 100% can. For many years, I have grown seeds inside, seeds that I ended up selling at the plant sale. You know, I mean, I had good starts that I grew, and I simply just had metal racks. I'll try to find them and link them for you guys. I had grow lights set up. I had a heat source. If you have really good, lighting and windows in your house, you can even attempt to do that. I've seen people take their spare closets and set up racks and grow lights, and so really the possibility is endless. If this is something that your heart's yearning towards and you're really wanting to maybe dive into, or think, man, I've never done that before, but it really sparks an interest, I encourage you to do it. Even if you don't have what you think you may need, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at just how little equipment and how little you need to get by to start seeds. So thank you guys for hanging out with me as I sowed my first seeds for 2021. It feels really good. I've got a to-do list inside, and that's one of those things I'm going to go in there and check off my to-do list. Now, I still have some lettuces to plant out. I'm going to wait a few weeks and just direct sow those. But for the most part, I got my herbs started today, and it just feels good. It feels really good. I love this time of year. I've just got this sheer anticipation of what's to come, and it gets me really excited. So thank you guys for hanging out with me today. I'll talk to you soon.